In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at SharePoint 2010 List. Now, if you're not familiar with List, it's a good thing to know because it's really one of the most basic foundational pieces of SharePoint. Most of the data-driven solutions that you put together are going to involve List. So, the big question is, what is List? Well, almost everything that you're going to look at in SharePoint is going to be lists, especially from this level. So a calendar, funny enough, that's actually a list. If I go to calendar at the top here, you can see that I can look at all events. That's a list of data. Task, that's list. Team discussion, so a discussion forum, also a list. So really, when I'm trying to explain lists to clients, I usually tell them that it's akin to, and some people might cringe at this example, but it's akin to a humongous Excel document, but much more manageable. So instead of having your tabs, instead of having filters and sorting, you're doing all this in SharePoint. All the items that you see in that Excel document become a part of a database, which gives you a lot of different ways to make that data more dynamic and more useful for data management. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to get started with a custom list. So we're going to start from the very beginning of lists and go over some of the basic features. So I'm going to go to Site Actions at the top here, and I'm going to click on More Options. And for this, you're going to see all the available templates. And really, again, if you're familiar with SharePoint, you'll realize that what SharePoint's trying to do is give you a starting point with some of the templates they've created for you. So there are a lot of different types of lists, and I can actually see the ones that SharePoint has already created for me by clicking on Lists here. So there's announcements, there's calendars, there's contacts, discussion boards. There's some that we've created for clients that are custom. You can import a spreadsheet to create your own list as well. So there's a lot of different things here. In this case, we're going to go with custom lists. But I will say that depending on what you're starting with, a lot of times it's great to go ahead and get started with one of the templates. Just try it out. So if you're going to do a contacts list, click on contacts and start from there. Same thing with task lists. You can do a project task list. Start from their template and then work your way around it. But again, right now we're just actually going to look at custom lists. I'm going to click on custom list, and let me just call this list student data. And I'm going to create the list, and like everything in SharePoint, it's creating it on the fly. Now, so this is a very basic list, obviously. So you see that there's really only one column here for this list, and that's title. So if you create a custom list, this is what it's going to look like. It's not going to have any information. It's waiting for you to customize the list for your needs. So in this case, in student data, I'm going to want to know some basic information. I'm going to want to know student name. I may want to know graduating year. I may want to know a lot of different things. So what I need to do here is I actually need to add more columns to this list. But let's start with the first one, because the first one is title is really not very, doesn't really explain what I'm trying to capture. I really want that first field that people fill out to be a last name. I want to be able to sort it by last name. So let's start with the basics here. If you want to change one of the list items here, one of the column titles here, go to List Settings. And you'll see on the List Settings page, there's a lot of different things here, but we're going to focus in on this columns area. I'm going to click on Title, and I'm going to change title to be last name. And there's some other information you can put here. In this case, I don't really necessarily need a description. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can require the information, which I am, enforce unique values, maximum number of characters, and again, a few other things. I'll go ahead and press OK though. And if I go back to my list, which you can see it on the navigation here, or you can see it in the breadcrumbs, I'll see that now last name has been changed, or title has been changed to last name. Now, what's interesting about this, anything that you do to modify the columns that appear here, whether you're adding or modifying, they end up coming up on what you would think of as a SharePoint form. So if I click on Add New Item, you'll see last name here. Now, what happens with this is that any column that you add to this list is going to show up on that form as well. So let's add another column. So I'm going to go to List at the top. Now there's two ways I can do this. I can go back to List Settings, and you saw before there's a few options for columns. One is create a column. But instead, what I want to do is I want to actually go from the top menu. It doesn't really matter. This is just another way of doing it. So I'll click on the list again, and over here you'll see this create column. And when you put your mouse over it, it'll explain it just a little bit. And we're going to click on that. And the one that I want now is first name. So last name, now first name. So a lot of different options it's giving you here to create a column. Multiple lines of text, single line of text is usually the default. Choice, numbers, so on and so forth. There's a lot of different things here. In this case, obviously, I want it to be a single line of text. So first name, again, I don't really care about a description, and this stuff I don't really necessarily need. But this at the end of this is an interesting thing to have checked or unchecked. Add to default view. We haven't really gotten into views yet, but if you want it to appear on this little spreadsheet that we showed you before that's kind of grayed out now, then you're going to say yes, keep that checked, press OK. And if you said add to default view, it's going to appear here in this view. All right, so let's add just a few more so we can get a hang of creating columns. Let me put in create column, and we'll say class, like the class of 2010, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different options here again, and one thing that I advise people is if you can make your column a multiple choice, it's going to be a lot easier for data management for later on. So it's going to be easier to sort and filter. Imagine if some people type in, class of 2010, and others say just 2010, and maybe some people say class of 2010 and all uppercase. Those types of irregularities will affect how things are filtered in SharePoint. So let's go ahead and make this a choice menu. And in this case, this is a made-up list, but I'll put a few things in there. So maybe it's we'll just be looking forward here. So class of 2012, class of 2013, 2014, 2015, and so on. I'm going to make this a drop-down menu because obviously they can only graduate. Well, in this instance, they're only graduating once. You can make it a checkbox if you want it to be a checkbox. It allows for multiple selections. You can allow fill-in choices. So if later on, there may be some discrepancies, you might want to say a fill-in choice, and it'll give people an option to put in their own choice. But I'm just going to keep that as a no now. And then default value is always going to go to the first one that you've entered. If you don't want any default value to appear, just delete that. And again, you have that add to default view, which is what we had before. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And again, we have class here. Now, let's take a look at that form. So add new item. So you see the different fields we have. Let's do one more. So create column, and we'll put in this one, let's see, description or comments, because maybe this is something that I want to know what's going on with the student, and it's going to require someone to put a little description in there. So in this case, I'm going to want multiple lines of text, and you'll notice that whatever I choose reflects what's down here below, the column setting. So single line of text only had a few things that it was asking you about. Multiple lines of text has a few more. If I do a choice, you saw those items, and so on and so forth. So in multiple lines of text, the things that it's asking you about. Description, again, I don't really care if we have that in there. Is it a required field? No, not necessarily. I really just want the data. Number of lines for editing. Now this is not going to limit the amount of data that they put in the field. It's just going to limit how much of a field that appears for them. So it's going to be 6 lines worth of a field that appears for them. And then you have some other things here. Now, plain text, rich text, or enhanced text. Now, some people default to enhanced rich text, but I do have a warning about that. And later on, we're going to show a view that's called the data sheet view. And if you have this as an enhanced rich text, it's not going to allow you to edit it in that view. May not be a big deal, but just to keep that in mind, I'm actually going to put plain text here because it just keeps it really simple. All right, add to default view, sure. Although, you think about that, and if people are writing a lot of information, you may not want it to appear in the column over here. So you know what, let's uncheck that. And now I'm going to press OK. And so you saw that in this case, it actually didn't appear because I said don't put this in the default view. Now it's still there. If I click on Add New Item, you can see the comments right here. It's just not appearing in my view. So let's get really quickly into views a little bit so we can understand what I'm talking about when I say view. The view that we have right now, current view, is all items. So basically anything that I said in the beginning, show this as the default view, is appearing right now. Let's say, for instance, that maybe I decided, you know what, I really do want those comments to appear when I'm looking at it in this view. Well, what you're going to do in that case is, you're already in the view that we want to modify, we're going to click on Modify View. And in this case, you're going to see all the columns that relate to the list that I've created. Now, the funny thing is we didn't actually create all of these things, but these are default pieces that SharePoint collects about the list items. So you could turn any of these on. You can say, I want to see who last modified this, the date and the person. I want to see versions on this. I want to see a lot of different things. Right now, it's just checking the things that we've selected. Now, interesting enough, by default, it's saying show me attachments. Well, in this case, maybe I don't have any attachments for this, so I'm just going to uncheck that because I don't want it taking up space in the view. But in this, maybe I want to have comments for you to view comments, so I'm going to check that because I want that to be viewed. So another thing that you see over here is you can position them. So if I decided for whatever reason that I wanted class to be first, you'll see that it reorders everything in line. And actually in this case, I actually don't want class to be first. I want last name to be first, first name to be second, class, and then comments. So I'll put that as number 4 there. But again, you have a lot of other things you can do here. Let's scroll down a little bit. This is a little bit more advanced, but very, very useful. And in this case, we don't have a lot of data that we're looking at just yet, but it's really neat to know about. So if you're used to sorting and filtering in Excel, this is the same type of concept. So I can go through and I can say I want to sort some of my data. So maybe I want to sort it so that I'm sorting the class in ascending or descending order. And then maybe it gives you an option, well, do you want to sort it again? Maybe you first sort it by class and then you sort it by first name or last name. Again, we don't have a lot of fields going on here, so it's harder to see how valuable this is, but just keep that in mind. Same thing for filtering. So I can go through and say, all right, I only want certain things to appear in this view. So maybe for this case, I want, let's do class. And if class is equal to 2012, that's when 2012, that's what I want to appear. Now you see this and or here, and then show more columns. So it really allows you to be very specific. You can say is equal to 2012 and 2013 and 2014. So again, you have a lot of options there to filter exactly what you want to see. And it's not doing anything to the data except affecting the view. So the data is still all there. It's just the view that you're seeing it in is a little bit different. There's a lot of other options here, and I don't really want to get into everything in this tutorial because again, we're just trying to go over the basics. But definitely, go through these if you get a chance. And on the left side, it's actually going to tell you a little bit about what this does. Tabular view, group by. Group by is something that I've used quite a bit. I might as well talk about it a little bit because that's something that we use, and that's grouping the data. So you can say, first I want to group it by a class, and what it'll do is it'll group the classes that you have there. Then group by something else if you want it. Totals, that's a great way to get data on the actual count. So I can say, show me, I don't really care about as much about count, about the class, but maybe the last name. I want to know how many students we're talking about here. And then we've got the different styles. We've got folders, item limits. Item limits, that's something interesting to know because by default, SharePoint's going to put the item displayed at 30. So let's say, for instance, maybe you have 300 items in your list. When you first look at that list, it's only going to show 30 at a time, and you'll see a little button at the bottom that lets you scroll through. If you want to change that, it's no problem. Just change it here. And then you have your mobile view as well. Now let me scroll back up here. I actually don't want to filter by class at this point. And I'm going to show all items in the view because all I really wanted to do in this case was add on comments. So let me go back through and press OK. And so now I have the comments there as well. Now, let's say, what if we decided that we wanted to change one of these? So again, it's the same thing we did before. If I want to change class to something else, I would go up to List Settings. Under the columns area, I click on class. And then not only is it letting me change the name of this, so if I wanted to say, I don't know, graduating class, I could change the name, but I can also change the type of field it is. So if I changed my mind and I said, you know what, I'd rather this be a single line of text, I can easily just click on this and make it a single line of text. Now, other things you have in this area, one thing that you might want to be aware of is column ordering. So let's say, for instance, that, yes, I realize that, on the views that I've changed comments to be over here, but what if I wanted, or class to be over in the third area, what if I wanted that to be different when it comes to the actual form itself? Well, just changing the view is really not going to affect how the fields look in the actual form. If I want to change how the fields look in the actual form, I need to change the column ordering. So I would go to List, List Settings, and that would change the column ordering here. So I would just click here to say column ordering, and very simple, you just say what you want there and press OK. In this case, I'm okay with that. I just wanted to show it to you. Notice when I scroll down as well, you have the views that have been created. Now, at this point, we haven't created any new views, but the All Items view you have is there. We have the option to create a new view here, but let me scroll up, and I'm going to go back to the student list, and I want to go back to the ribbon again to create a view. So let's say in this case, I want to create a new view of this data. So I'm going to click Create View. The first thing it's going to ask me is choose the view format. So you'll see a lot of things here. Could be a little confusing, but you've got to think about this in terms of data. So calendar view is just data. What it's doing is it's finding a date in your list, and it's making that date into a calendar view. Data sheet view, Gantt view, these are things for you to try. Standard view is what we usually go with, but it really depends on the needs. So I'm going to click Standard View. And maybe on this one I'm going to say the name of this view is Grouped by Class. And we'll do a little grouping on this. And you see here I have the option to make this the default view. So if someone clicks on data, student data, that could be the default view for them. As an owner of this list, I have the option to create a public view. So this is a view for everyone who's going to go to this list. They can choose this view. Or I can go and create a personal view. Now, the interesting thing about this is that people who are looking at this data, maybe not the owners of the list, but someone who's looking and can contribute, can actually create their own personal view, which is a nice feature. In this case, I'm going to keep it public. Now, I don't mind how this is ordered, so I'm going to keep it the way that it is. Maybe I'm going to turn off comments this time, though, because there might be a lot of text in there. But in this case, what I want to do is I'm going to group it. So I don't need to sort, I don't need to filter, but I do want to group. So I'm going to say in here, I want to group this by class. And it's very easy in this case. I'm just going to press OK. And we don't have anything in here, so you can't really see it. So let's just add a few things. So I'm going to say, on this one, Sparks, Toby, and that's going to be the class of 2012. And again, I'm just going to put a few things in here. Let's going to say Hauser, Kathy, and maybe this is 2012 as well. And we'll put in Green, Amy, 2013, and save. So you notice here a very simplistic view of this, but I've grouped this by class. So I've got 2 entries in class, and I can expand that, and I'll see the entries there, or I can collapse it, and then 1 entry here as well. So again, it's just a good way to look at the data. So again, going back to that whole analogy of let's look at this as an Excel document. Yes, imagine it as a huge Excel document, but you can do a lot of controlling about what people can see using views. Let's go up one more time to list, and we're going to wrap this up and just go over some more of the basic pieces. So let me go back to all items, and I want to go over some of the things that are actually in the ribbon over here. Data sheet view is something that I really like to use. Now, unfortunately, it's only available in Internet Explorer. So if you're a Mac user at this point in time, it's not something that's going to be easy for you to access. But if you're on a PC and you have Internet Explorer, Data Sheet View is fantastic for putting a lot of data in. And let me just click on that so you can see what that looks like. Basically, it reminds you of Excel. Now, funny enough, it actually has this little Access database signature up here, or icon up here, reminding you that this actually is a database. But this is really nice if you have a lot of data that you're putting in here. Let's say, great student, pleasure to work with. So maybe you're keeping up with students for references later to work with. And, okay, student, didn't come to class. And then horrible student, these are made up people, of course. Don't recommend. So in this case, I'm just typing away. And the same thing here, even though this is a drop-down menu, I still have the same options as I did before. Now, the interesting thing about this too is as I click off of an actual field here, it saves it. So I don't have to, you'll notice there's nothing in here that says save. As I click away from it, it saves automatically. And at any point, I can go back to my standard view, and I have that information there. Okay, so let's keep going through this. We've already gone over how to create views and create columns, and we have the different views here. Now notice, now I have group by class that's publicly available as well. So any views that you create are going to be available under current view. You can email a link. Alerts are really, really nice to have in SharePoint, and you'll find this throughout SharePoint. I love the alert feature. I can set an alert on this list and just take a look at some of the things it's asking you about. It's basically, it's going to send me an email, but I can be very specific about when I want to be alerted. So here's the title, the subject line of the email. Here's who it's going to go to. Email here. And again, a lot of different options here. So the type of change. Well, tell me when new items are added. Tell me when existing items are modified. Tell me when something's been deleted. So you can send alerts in those cases. And then tell me when someone else changes an item. Someone else changes an item that I created or modified by me. My favorite part is actually how often you receive those notifications. So if it's something that is really time sensitive, then you can have a notification that says, at any point send something to me immediately. Or if maybe you just want to, there's going to be a lot of results coming in, you don't want a lot of emails, send it daily or send it weekly at this date and time. Now, the interesting thing is too, you'll notice that if you click on one of these items, you have that same option here. So you can actually set up an alert for an item in that list, same type of things that you had before. Moving on, you've got the RSS feed here. You've got the ability to export to Excel, sync to SharePoint Workspace, open with access. There's a lot of things that you may or may not use. Some of these are more advanced. So if you want to take your the form that you create to a new level, you can customize the form in InfoPath, which is available if you have the Microsoft Office Professional Suite. You can establish workflows in SharePoint Designer, which is a free program that Microsoft offers. List settings we've gone over before, and then here are permissions and then basic workflows as well. I know I'm going over this really quickly, but I just wanted to show some of the things that are in there. And I'm going to go ahead and conclude the introduction to lists. There's a lot more to it, but hopefully this will be enough to kind of help you understand some of the basics to how to get started when it comes to either creating this list or managing these lists.